I suppose if you're going to start a story like this, one where your entire reality fractures under the weight of betrayal, it has to begin with love. Or at least what you thought was love. Because that's how I'd always seen my life. A series of gentle chapters written by trust, laughter, and the people I chose to let inside my tiny, imperfect heart. My name is Emily, and for most of my life I believed I was one of the lucky ones. I had a best friend, Hannah, who'd been stitched into my days since I was 15. She was loud where I was quiet, daring where I was careful. The kind of girl who pulled me into lakes fully clothed, who held my hair back after my first heartbreak and promised me, eyes shining, that we'd conquer the world together. It sounds dramatic, doesn't it? But that's what we were. Two girls who swore under teenage constellations that we'd never let life drive a wedge between us. That no matter who we married or where we ended up, we'd always belong to each other first. Years went by. We went to different colleges, but even that didn't chip at the foundation. Weekend visits, long midnight calls, photos sent back and forth. Us trying on silly hats, holding coffee cups up like trophies, grinning with sunburnt noses. She knew every detail of my life. Every stupid crush. Every embarrassing secret. Hannah was the first person I called when I landed my first real job. She was the one who picked me up off the bathroom floor the day my father died. And I, for my part, believed with all my fragile heart that her loyalty was my shelter. Then came Aaron. It was a January evening, so cold that our breath looked like ghost stories. Hannah and I went to a small local art show. She'd begged me to go, even though I was exhausted after work. "Emily, you work too much," she scolded. "If we're going to be old ladies together, at least let's start by living now." Aaron was there with a mutual friend, standing in front of a painting that looked like shattered glass. He was thoughtful, sweet, and just awkward enough to be endearing. When he laughed, it felt like the air shifted. I introduced myself, Hannah right at my side of course, and by the end of the night, he asked for my number. Hannah teased me the whole drive home. "He's totally into you." "Oh my God, Em, when's the last time a guy made you blush that hard?" "He did not make me blush," I argued, touching my warm cheeks. But she just cackled and squeezed my hand. "I approve. He seems solid. Plus, he laughed at your weird museum rant." She was the first person I told when he asked me out. The first person to help me choose a dress. The first person to read and reread my nervous text messages before dates. When Aaron and I became serious, Hannah didn't fade into the background. She embedded herself deeper. She'd show up with wine and force Aaron to watch sappy movies with us. She'd plan elaborate game nights, sit on our couch with her legs tucked under her, laughing until tears streaked down her cheeks. She even joked once that we were her favorite couple because it felt like she was dating us both. I remember feeling a small prickle of discomfort when she said that, but I laughed it off. It was Hannah. My Hannah. She didn't have a malicious bone in her body. If anything, she was overcompensating for her own loneliness, still drifting from one short-lived relationship to the next. Or so I thought. Aaron proposed after 2 years, under a canopy of string lights at my mother's house. Hannah filmed the whole thing on her phone, her voice cracking as she shouted, "Say yes already." I said yes, of course. And she was the first to hug me, nearly knocking me over, squealing that she'd been waiting for this since we were kids doodling wedding dresses in our notebooks. If I close my eyes, I can still see that moment. Her smile stretched wide, eyes shining with what I believed was nothing but joy for me. That's the cruelty of hindsight, isn't it? You look back and start noticing the tiny fractures that were there all along. The way she sometimes touched his arm a little too long. The secret glances I couldn't quite read. The time I found her favorite lipstick in the glove box of Aaron's car, which she brushed off by saying he'd offered to drop her at work after her tire blew. Small things easily swallowed by trust. After all, why would my best friend ever hurt me? Why would the man who swore forever at my kitchen table, ring trembling in his hand, ever look at someone else? We were married in June, Hannah right by my side as my maid of honor. She gave a speech that had half the reception crying and the other half howling with laughter. She called us soulmates, said Aaron was lucky because he'd found someone who loved as fiercely as Emily did. When I hugged her afterward, she whispered, "You deserve the world, Em." And I believed her. I believed every word that fell from her mouth, every tear that sparkled on her cheek, every promise we'd ever made to each other. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It only cuts that deep if it comes from someone you handed the knife to willingly. So when people ask how I didn't see it coming, how I could have missed the signs, I don't have a clever answer. I only know that I loved two people with the softest parts of myself, trusted them with everything fragile inside me, and they both chose to shatter it. But that's getting ahead of the story. Before the poison, before the hospital room, before I lay in a sterile bed fighting for breath, clutching memories like lifelines, I was just a woman who thought her best friend and her husband were the two safest people on earth. If only I'd known what they were both capable of. If only I'd paid more attention to the things that didn't add up. But that's how monsters slip in, isn't it? Not with snarls or claws, but with laughter, warm arms, and the illusion of unconditional love. And that's how it all began. It's strange how love and betrayal can live so close together that, until the last second, you can't tell them apart. Like standing in a forest and realizing too late that some of the trees are hollow. After the wedding, life was supposed to be our golden chapter. Aaron and I moved into a charming brick house on Mulberry Lane, complete with a squeaky porch swing and sunflowers she'd planted for me as a surprise. He left me little notes on the fridge. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me fold laundry like I was the only woman left in the world. And Hannah. She was there almost every weekend. She'd bring bags of groceries, because newlyweds always forget to eat real food, she joked. We'd binge-watch cooking shows, drink cheap wine, and try to replicate the dishes until the kitchen looked like a war zone. Aaron would lean in the doorway, smiling, wiping sauce off Hannah's cheek with a casual intimacy I was too blind to question. It was all so easy until it wasn't. I started noticing how Hannah's laughter at my husband's jokes was louder than mine. How she'd text him about restaurant reservations for the three of us, except sometimes she forgot to loop me in. Or how once, while clearing the table, her phone lit up with Aaron's name, and she fumbled to silence it so quickly I thought she might drop it. I wanted to believe it was innocent, that they were planning some surprise for me. God, I clung to that fantasy. Because the alternative was something ugly and dark that I didn't want to admit could be festering in my perfect life. So I ignored it. Because that's what love conditioned me to do. To assume the best. To smooth the edges of every worry until it no longer resembled anything sharp. Then came the headaches. They started as faint pulses behind my eyes, easy to blame on too much screen time. But they grew worse. Throbbing volcanic aches that made me curl on the couch with a cold cloth, whimpering. Hannah was there the first time it got bad enough to black out my vision. I remember clutching my temples, half laughing to downplay it, when the world just dropped away. I woke up to her kneeling over me, face pale, shaking my shoulder. Aaron had run to the pharmacy. She made me tea, her special blend, she called it, with mint and lemon and some powder she'd started adding lately. Said it helped with stress. I drank it because I trusted her. I always trusted her. But over the next few weeks, the episodes grew worse. My hands would tremble when I tried to button my blouse. My tongue felt thick, words slurring so badly that once Aaron joked I sounded drunk. He didn't look worried. He looked irritated, like my health was an inconvenience. It was Hannah who seemed most attentive, hovering, stroking my hair. "You've always been fragile," she murmured once. "Remember how you used to faint in high school during blood drives? You just need rest, Em." I clung to that explanation. Because if it was stress, if it was my own delicate constitution, then I didn't have to fear anything darker. But one night I woke to find Hannah in our kitchen, alone, pouring something from a small brown vial into my teacup, stirring carefully. When she saw me, she jumped so hard the spoon clattered. "Emily, you scared me. Couldn't sleep, huh? I thought I'd make you your tea to help." My mouth opened then closed. I wanted to ask what was in the bottle. Why she looked like a child caught painting on the walls. But my brain was tired, always tired, and some part of me still desperate to believe in the sisterhood we'd built. So I nodded. Sat down. Let her place the cup in front of me. Drank it. I told myself maybe it was just a vitamin concoction. Maybe she'd been too embarrassed to admit she bought some herbal cure from a sketchy online shop. We'd always laughed about her obsession with weird supplements. But that night I lay awake next to Aaron, stomach roiling, ears ringing. I reached for his hand. He didn't even stir. And that's when it hit me. For the first time, a cold certainty ran through me. Something was wrong. More wrong than I'd dared to imagine. But the thing about realization doesn't come with a plan. Just because I finally admitted to myself that Hannah's care felt more like control, that Aaron's patience felt more like waiting for something, didn't mean I knew how to stop it. I was sick. Weak. Dependent on the very people I now feared were orchestrating my downfall. Still, I decided to watch them. To keep my eyes open, even if my body was betraying me. I stopped taking the tea when I could. Flushed it when Hannah wasn't looking. I made excuses. My stomach's upset. Maybe later. And slowly, tiny threads of energy began to return. My thoughts grew sharper. I noticed Aaron's sudden annoyance that my condition wasn't worsening. How he sighed when he thought I was asleep. How Hannah's hands trembled when I laughed too easily. Like she couldn't understand why I still had joy left. That's when I began to piece it together. Late one afternoon, I found Hannah's purse left on the kitchen counter. I know it sounds like a betrayal, but trust me, betrayal has a way of justifying desperate acts. I dug inside, heart pounding. Beneath her lipstick and spare charger was that same brown vial. I read the label. Couldn't pronounce half of it. But a quick search on my phone revealed enough to make my breath seize. A compound used to calm nerves. Harmless in tiny doses, dangerous when accumulated. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped her bag. And just then I heard the front door open. Hannah's cheerful voice calling out for me. I stuffed everything back, slapped on a smile and greeted her. Because the hunt changes when you realize you're the prey. You learn to hide your wounds. Play along until you can escape. I hugged her, pressed my cheek to hers, and for the first time in 20 years, felt nothing but ice. It's horrifying how easily your mind tries to protect you from the truth. Even after finding that brown vial, even after reading articles warning about organ strain, blood toxicity, even after staring into Hannah's eyes and seeing something too steady, too calculating, I still hesitated to accept it. Because to accept it meant rewriting everything. The sleepovers, the tearful confessions, the promises whispered over wine. It meant my life was a lie. So I stalled. Convinced myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe stress had made me paranoid. But deep down, a colder part of me started preparing. I began quietly documenting. I snapped a photo of the vial when I found it again later in Hannah's purse. Started a notes file on my phone detailing my symptoms. When they worsened, when they eased, when I skipped the tea. The pattern was unmistakable. On days Hannah didn't visit, I felt better. Lighter. My head didn't pulse like it might split. My vision didn't dance with static. But the moment she showed up, armed with that false bright smile and hot mug, the haze returned. I pretended to sip. Pretended to giggle with her over reality shows. Pretended everything was exactly as it used to be. One Aaron's shifting demeanor. Meanwhile, Aaron grew distant. Not in the ordinary marriage wears down way. More in the way of someone impatient for a finish line. He stopped asking how I felt. Barely touched me except to brush past. One night, half asleep, I heard him whispering on the phone in the hallway. His voice low but urgent. I couldn't catch the words, but I caught the tone. It was relief. Anticipation. Like he was almost there. The next morning he brought me breakfast in bed. Smiling too wide. Eggs, toast, orange juice. It should have been sweet. But the way he watched me take the first bite, eyes sharp, hungry, waiting, made me set the fork down. Not feeling great. Maybe later. His mouth twitched. Annoyance flashed. Then it was gone. Mask slipped, mask restored. I think that was the exact moment I understood. My best friend wasn't the only one dosing me. To the phone call that almost gave me away. Cassie, an old co-worker I'd drifted from, called out of the blue. Just wanted to check in, see how married life was. I nearly burst into tears at the sound of her voice. We chatted lightly, but she must have heard something crack. Emily, you okay? Sound. I don't know. Small. I laughed it off. Just tired. You know me. But then she said the simplest, kindest words. Call me if you ever need to come up for air. And I almost did. Almost confessed it all right then. But Hannah arrived unannounced 15 minutes later, letting herself in with the spare key she still kept. Her eyes flickered to my phone. Who were you talking to? Just Cassie. Work stuff. She smiled tight. And the way she lingered by my coffee mug later made my skin crawl. Starting to stage my own game. I knew if I ran outright they might follow. Might spin a story about mental health, about paranoia. They'd practiced their performances too well. So I decided to give them nothing to suspect. I started complimenting Hannah again. Letting Aaron see me nuzzle into him on the couch. I'd pour my tea into potted plants when no one was looking. I flushed wine when Hannah filled my glass too eagerly. Slowly, clarity returned. Like fog draining off a valley. Could think. Plan. And once I did, so many little memories rearranged themselves into something horrifying. Hannah volunteering to handle my prescriptions. So you don't have to worry. Aaron signing for mysterious packages while avoiding my eyes. The way both of them seemed to relax most on days I was weakest, when my head lolled and words slurred. For the dinner that changed everything. About a month after my resolve solidified, Hannah invited herself over with takeout. She insisted on plating everything, bustling around the kitchen while Aaron poured wine. I caught a glance between them that made bile rise. At the table I pushed food around, joking that my stomach felt off. Hannah pouted. You need to keep your strength up, Em. Maybe in a bit. This nausea's been worse. She exchanged a look with Aaron, frustrated, almost desperate. Later I heard them in the kitchen. She's stalling. You said it'd be soon. It will be. Stop crowding her. My blood turned to ice. I tiptoed back to the living room, sat down, pasted on a smile when they returned. I was done pretending to be oblivious. But I wasn't done surviving. 5. Recording the confession I needed. The next day, I set up my phone under the couch cushion. Invited Hannah over for tea just like old times. I steered the conversation carefully. Laughed about how fragile I'd been lately. How lucky I was to have her. And then, with my heart threatening to seize, I said softly, sometimes I think it'd be easier for you and Aaron if I wasn't here anymore. She froze, cup halfway to her lips. Then she set it down, reached across, squeezed my hand. Emily, don't say that. But her eyes. Oh God, her eyes didn't match her voice. So I leaned in. I mean, if something happened, you'd both be okay, right? Maybe even happier. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles, lingering just a second too long. Don't talk like that, she whispered. But it sounded like a prayer being answered. 6. The quiet verdict. When she left, I pulled the phone out, hands shaking. Played it back. Her tiny gasp. The way she didn't deny it, didn't recoil. The way her fingers tightened, not to comfort but to claim. That was my proof. Maybe not enough for police yet. But enough for me. Enough to know the next step was leaving, quietly, before whatever they were hoping for happened on their timeline instead of mine. And that's how I lived in the days that followed. Half ghost, half desperate survivor, waiting for the right moment to vanish from the trap they'd spent so long carefully setting. The thing about living in constant hyper-awareness, always listening for footsteps, always second-guessing every smile, is that it wears you down. Even if you're careful, even if you pour out tea and flush glasses of wine, fear does something corrosive to your insides. By December, my weight had dropped so noticeably that Hannah began tuteing over my collarbones, tracing them with a little frown. You're wasting away, Em. You have to let us take care of you. It sounded tender. But her fingers pressed a bit too hard, almost like she was testing how hollow I'd become. Aaron hovered behind her, hand on her shoulder, thumb moving back and forth. My stomach clenched. That night after they left, I caught myself in the bathroom mirror. Sunken cheeks. Skin so pale the blue of my veins looked painted on. I pressed my fingertips to my neck, trying to find the steady thump that had become my private ritual of defiance. It fluttered under my touch there, still there. The doctor visit that startled even me. I knew I couldn't keep delaying forever, so I made a doctor's appointment under the pretense of a routine check. When the physician's assistant called me back, she paused mid-sentence as I stepped onto the scale. Her eyes darted to my chart. "Emily, this is... You've lost how much since your last physical?" I mumbled something about stress. She didn't look convinced. Blood was drawn, blood pressure taken way too low. When the doctor entered, his brow furrowed deeper with every answer I gave. "Any chance you're pregnant?" "No." "Any vomiting?" "Night sweats." "Some nausea?" "Headaches?" "My friend thinks it's just anxiety." The doctor's eyes sharpened. "And how long has that friend been helping you with your meals exactly?" Froze. He tapped his pen against the counter. "Emily, sometimes people you trust mean well but don't realize they're hurting you. Or worse. I want to run a toxicology panel." My throat closed. I almost denied it, almost covered for Hannah and Aaron out of sheer ingrained loyalty. But something inside me cracked, and I just nodded. To the test results and first real clue. Days later he called. "Emily, your labs concern me. There are irregular compounds in your system that shouldn't be there. Nothing lethal yet, but cumulative exposure is dangerous. I want to admit you for observation." My heart thudded. "What does that mean? Are you saying someone's poisoning me?" He didn't answer directly. "I'm saying we need to find out exactly what's going on. And it may be best if whoever's been preparing your food steps back for now." I thanked him, voice mechanical, and hung up. Then I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my hands, wondering how many times they'd carried a cup of poison to my lips. 3. Hannah's casual terror. When Hannah came by that afternoon, I didn't mention the tests. Didn't mention the hospital stay I'd scheduled for the following week. Instead I smiled. Asked her if she could make her special lemon tea, because my nerves were acting up. Her eyes lit too bright. "Of course, Em. Anything for you." Watching her stand at my stove, humming, stirring, made my skin crawl. I imagined telling her. Watching her mask crack. Seeing the horror of being found out ripple across her face. But she was too practiced. When she handed me the cup, her hand lingered on mine a moment longer than normal. Like she was saying goodbye. Or maybe sealing something. I excused myself, poured the tea into the bathroom sink, rinsed the mug 3 times. Then I sat on the edge of the tub and trembled. Because something in me knew. They weren't going to let this drag out forever. 4. Aaron's final slip. 2 nights later, Aaron slid into bed beside me, reeking of whiskey. Faint sleep. He pulled me close anyway, whispering against my hair. "It'll be over soon. You'll feel better, I promise." My entire body went cold. I forced my breathing to stay even, let my arm lie limp across his waist, even as my mind screamed to shove him off me and run. Because that was the closest he'd ever come to admitting it. That this was intentional. That he was waiting for me to stop fighting. 5. The hospital plan. And the unexpected twist. The next morning I packed a small overnight bag. Told Aaron the doctor wanted to run a few IVs, maybe monitor my blood sugar. Downplayed it. He didn't argue. He just nodded, almost relieved. Probably for the best. Get it all sorted. The lie settled in my stomach like lead. Because the truth was, I wasn't planning to come home for a while. The hospital had already flagged my case, even suggested involving law enforcement if the labs showed escalation. But the plan wasn't only mine anymore. It was growing beyond me. That afternoon, as I waited for the car service to take me to the hospital, Hannah showed up unannounced, plastic bag in hand. "I thought you'd want your favorite soup while you're waiting." My pulse thundered. That's sweet. But the hospital's sending someone any minute. She ignored me, bustling to the kitchen. At least have a few sips. You've been so weak. I watched her pour the steaming broth into a mug. My hands balled into fists. Hannah, really? I'm too nauseous. I turned. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Emily, please. I've been taking care of you for months. Let me do this. Her voice cracked, desperate, almost angry. I realized then that this wasn't just about my husband. Hannah needed me dependent, needed me sick, needed me gone, so she could be the last one standing in the life we'd built. The moment everything changed. I forced a cough, pretended to gag. I'll be right back, bathroom. In there I texted the doctor's office hotline. She's here. She brought food. I'm scared. Seconds later my phone buzzed. Stay put. Calling local police for welfare check. I returned to the living room, heartbeat jackhammering. Sat on the couch, wrapped the blanket tight around my shoulders. Hannah pressed the mug into my hands. Her fingers lingered again. Just a sip, for me. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. She jolted. Who's that? Probably the car for the hospital. But when I opened the door, it wasn't a driver. It was two uniformed officers. And in that tiny gasp that escaped Hannah's throat, in the way her shoulders slumped and her hand fell away from mine, I knew the truth had finally found a way in. The police officers stood there, blocking out the gentle afternoon sun with their dark uniforms and heavy presence. For one breathtaking second, I almost slammed the door. Almost lied. Almost protected Hannah the way I always had. Because habits don't just break. They bleed out slowly, leaving stains. But then I felt the weight of the warm mug still in my hands. The steam rising between my trembling fingers. And I realized, if I let this slide I might not get another chance. So I stepped aside. Officers, please come in. Their boots clomped against the hardwood. Hannah hovered by the kitchen counter, her smile brittle and glassy. She tried to wipe her hands on a dish towel that already looked clean. Is there a problem? She chirped. The shorter cop, Officer Lewis, according to his badge, flicked a glance at me, then at the mug. His eyes sharpened. We received a call from your doctor's office, ma'am. They were concerned about potential poisoning. Hannah let out a short, strangled laugh. Poisoning? That's absurd. Emily, tell them. I've been taking care of you. She's just run down, you know how delicate she's always been. My stomach twisted. That same language. Delicate. Fragile. Words she'd used like knives hidden in bouquets. I set the mug on the coffee table, hands raised slightly, as if it might explode. Officers, I don't know what's in that. I didn't make it. Hannah's eyes flew to me. Wait. Emily, how can you say that? After everything. I'm your best friend. Her voice cracked on best friend, like she was choking on the irony. The taller officer, Morales, stepped forward. Ma'am, we're going to need you to stay right here. We'll also be calling an ambulance to get samples from Ms. Emily to ensure she's stable. You can't be serious, Hannah snapped, the sweetness dropping from her face so fast it left a vacuum. I'd never hurt her. Officer Lewis gave her a measured look. Then you shouldn't mind us checking. Aaron arrives, and makes it worse. As if the universe timed it for maximum pain, the front door opened. Aaron strolled in, sunglasses perched on his head, grocery bag dangling from one hand. He took in the scene, police, me pale and shaking on the couch, Hannah wringing her hands. His mouth twitched. What's all this? Your wife's friend is under suspicion of poisoning her, Morales said flatly. Aaron's eyes darted to Hannah, who looked about ready to collapse. His jaw flexed, and in that briefest of moments, something passed between them. Not fear, not shock. A tiny shiver of mutual understanding. It was enough to turn my stomach inside out. This is ridiculous, Aaron said, setting down the bag a little too forcefully. Emily's been sick for months. Maybe she's confused, delusional. All these tests have stressed her out. That last sentence was like a slap. All these tests. as if my attempts to save myself were inconveniences. 2. The quiet power of finally saying it. I stood up, though my knees wobbled. The entire room seemed to sway. But I found my voice, scraped raw from silence. I am not delusional. I found a vial in Hannah's purse. I have notes on when my symptoms worsened. The doctor has everything documented. And Aaron. I swallowed. His eyes narrowed, face reddening. Aaron hasn't exactly been a husband these past months. He's been waiting for me to get worse. I heard you on the phone that night. I heard you say it would be over soon. Hannah let out a strangled sob. Aaron lunged forward a step, but Morales blocked him. Don't, sir. Sit down. 3. The ambulance and the worst hour of my life. EMTs arrived in a flurry of blue gloves and equipment bags. They took blood samples, checked my vitals, asked gentle questions. I was vaguely aware of Hannah being ushered outside to sit on the curb, one officer beside her. Aaron stayed inside, pacing like a caged animal. When the EMT finally pronounced, "BP is low, but she's stable enough to stay home under watch tonight if that's her preference," a weird wave of relief hit me. I didn't want to go to the sterile smell of hospital walls again. I wanted this over, here now. The police finished gathering initial statements, promised follow-ups. They took the mug, the tea canister from Hannah's car, which she claimed was, just in case Emily needed extra. And then they left. The door clicked shut. Silence slammed down. 4. The confrontation that ripped everything open. Hannah burst into tears, racing toward me. "Emily, I swear, I never meant for it to be like this. I wanted to take care of you," Aaron said. "Don't drag me into this," Aaron snarled. But his hands clenched at his sides. "You are in this," she screamed, voice splintering into something feral. "You said once she was gone." I slapped my hands over my ears. "Stop. I don't want to hear it. Emily, please. Please. I loved you. I loved both of you. I thought we'd." Her voice cracked, dissolving into messy sobs. Aaron turned away, hands over his mouth like he might be sick. But it wasn't guilt in his eyes. It was sheer frustration at being caught. 5. The final fracture. "Get out," I whispered. Hannah blinked. Please. Get out." I screamed so loud my throat tore. "Both of you. I don't care where you go. Just get out of my house." Hannah fled, face streaked with tears. Aaron lingered a beat longer. His expression almost pitted me, like I was the unreasonable one. "You're going to regret this. You won't be able to handle things alone." Then he left too. The door slammed. The echo rattled picture frames on the wall. I sank to the floor, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. Leo, our dog, crept out from the bedroom, pressing his warm body against me. I buried my face in his fur and sobbed until there was nothing left. 6. Alone and free. The police would come back. They'd run more tests, maybe file charges. But in that moment, under the weak afternoon light pooling on the rug, it hit me with sharp clarity. I was alone. Utterly, achingly alone. But also, finally, terrifyingly, free. No more poisoned mugs. No more careful watching of every expression. No more twisting myself into knots to pretend my best friend's affection was pure. I rocked on the floor with Leo, whispering over and over, "Still here. Still here." Because somehow, despite everything, despite them, I was. The night after I threw them both out felt like being dropped into the coldest ocean. I lay in bed with the covers pulled tight around me, Leo pressed against my legs, my phone clutched in my palm like a lifeline. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the settling pipes sent my heart into a sprint. I kept expecting Hannah's face to appear in the window, or Aaron's key to turn in the lock. But no one came. And I both blessed and cursed that emptiness. 1. The detectives come knocking. The next morning, a knock on the door jolted me so violently I almost fell off the couch. I peered through the peephole. Not Hannah, not Aaron. 2 plainclothes detectives, badges already out. I let them in on shaky legs. One was a tall woman named Detective Salazar. The other, a shorter man with kind eyes who introduced himself as Detective Pruitt. They didn't waste time. Emily, we have some preliminary lab results from the items seized yesterday. We'd like to discuss them with you. My stomach lurched. I sank into the armchair as Salazar flipped open a folder. Your tea, specifically the blend your friend was providing, tested positive for repeated low doses of barbiturates. Enough over time to keep someone sedated, off balance. Enough to potentially cause organ damage. I pressed a hand over my mouth. The room wobbled. As for the supplements in the kitchen and Hannah's purse, some contained phenobarbital derivatives. Illegal without prescription. We're still running a comprehensive tox screen on your blood samples. Jesus, I whispered. Pruitt leaned forward slightly. Emily, was there ever a time you felt compelled or pressured to sign any documents while under their care? A new insurance policy. A will. A chill spidered down my spine. I shook my head slowly. No, nothing new. But they had control over everything else. Bills, groceries, prescriptions. I didn't even question it. Salazar nodded, scribbling notes. To Hannah's last twisted message. Before leaving, they handed me a small evidence envelope. We found this among your friend's belongings. A letter addressed to you. Normally we'd keep it, but it doesn't contain direct threats. We thought you might want it. I took it with numb fingers. Waited until the door closed behind them before I tore it open. Dear Emily, I know by now you think I'm a monster. Maybe I am. But you were always so fragile, so easily broken. I thought if I could just keep you soft, keep you needing me, we'd always have each other. And when you started pulling away, when I saw how he looked at you like a burden, I thought maybe it was time to let you go. Peacefully. Gently. So you wouldn't have to see him slip away too. I loved you, Emily. More than he ever did. More than anyone ever will. Forgive me for trying to spare you the loneliness you're about to feel. Always, Hannah. The paper shook in my hands. I didn't know whether to sob or scream. Because in that twisted confession, I realized Hannah never saw me as an equal. Not even as a person. I was a fragile doll to cradle, to medicate, to ultimately dispose of. All under the guise of love. Threeb, the cold shadow of Aaron. Aaron meanwhile had vanished. His phone disconnected. I learned from Pruitt a week later that he'd quietly withdrawn several $1,000s from our joint savings before disappearing. No note, no apology. Just an empty account and a gaping wound where our marriage had lived. We'll continue to monitor his movements, Pruitt assured. If he tries to contact you, call us immediately. Promised I would. Though deep down, I doubted Aaron wanted anything to do with me now that I'd proven too stubborn to die. 4 nights are the hardest. The house echoed without them. Echoed in a way that forced me to hear every accusing thought in my own head. How could you not see it? How did you miss the signs? How did you let them dose you night after night without asking more questions? Leo was my only anchor. He'd rest his head on my lap, stare up with that soft trust only animals can give. And I'd bury my face in his fur, telling him the same story on repeat. We made it. We're okay. I promise we're okay. Because sometimes you have to say it out loud to keep it true. 5. The start of something like healing. I started therapy again. Marla, my original therapist from years back, took me on without a second thought. I expected her to look at me with pity. Instead, she greeted me at the door with a long hug. You're here. That's all that matters right now. Each session peeled back another layer. The guilt, the confusion, the grief. Because I'd lost them both. My best friend and my husband. Even before the police ever showed up. I just hadn't been willing to see it. 6. Packing up old ghosts. Eventually, I decided I couldn't stay in the Mulberry Lane house. Every corner whispered with memories. Hannah perched on the kitchen counter, Aaron's laugh echoing off the stairwell, my own happy voice calling them to dinner. So I began packing, box after box. Little by little, as my strength returned. I found one of Hannah's earrings wedged in the couch cushions. Found Aaron's favorite mug still by the sink. For a long time I just stared at those pieces. wondering how love could rot so quietly, so thoroughly, until all that was left was poison. Then I dropped them in the trash. 7. A quiet promise to myself. On my last night in the house, I lay on the living room floor with Leo snuggled close, looking up at the ceiling fan turning slowly above us. "I don't ever want to be that fragile again," I whispered. "Not for anyone. Not ever." And Leo huffed out a little sigh, almost like he agreed. 8. Moving toward the future. The next morning, a moving van pulled away from the curb. I watched it go, heart squeezing painfully, because leaving meant letting go of not just the bad, but all the beautiful illusions too. The family dinners, the movie nights, the feeling of being wanted, needed, loved. But illusions can't keep you alive. And I was done living half alive. I turned the key in the lock one final time. Gave the porch a gentle pat. Then Leo and I walked to my car and drove away. Windows down. Cold air sharp in my lungs. Each mile a little more distance from the people who thought my life was expendable. The first days in the new apartment were oddly silent. Not peaceful. More like the silence of a church after everyone's left. The rooms were smaller. The paint smelled fresh. The windows overlooked nothing special. Just cracked asphalt, a crooked mailbox, a neighbor's bright plastic flamingo. But for the first time in months, the air didn't carry an aftertaste of fear. No one hovered by the stove, pushing tea. No one waited for me to collapse. It was just Leo and me, padding through empty rooms, leaving little echoes of our new life. ##### One simple rituals to remind myself I was still here. I started tiny. Every morning I opened the window, even when it was cold, just to feel air that hadn't been pre-filtered by someone else's hand. I bought cheap daffodils from the grocery store and set them in a chipped mason jar on the sill. At night, I'd light a candle and read out loud. It didn't matter what. Fairy tales, news articles, pages from old travel books. I just needed to hear my own voice again, steady and unbroken. Sometimes I'd stumble. Words would catch. My throat would close around a memory of Hannah's laugh or Aaron's hand on my shoulder. I'd have to set the book down and wait for my pulse to slow. But eventually I'd pick it up again. Keep reading. Because survival, I was learning, isn't one big triumph. It's 100 tiny choices to keep living in the ordinary moments. ####2 Unexpected kindness from a near stranger. About a week in, I bumped into my upstairs neighbor in the stairwell. Her name was Grace. Mid-50s, hair like silver silk tied in a neat knot. She was balancing a sack of groceries on one hip, jingling her keys with the other. Leo bounded right up to her, tail a blur. "Well, aren't you handsome?" she cooed, scratching behind his ears. Then she glanced up at me, eyes crinkling kindly. "Just moved in." I nodded, awkward. "Yeah. Still unpacking." "It gets better once you stop tripping over boxes," she chuckled. "I'm in 3B. Knock if you ever need sugar. Or if you just need someone to tell you your hair looks fine on the days you think it doesn't." It was so ordinary, so profoundly gentle that tears stung my eyes. Grace paused, head tilting. She didn't pry. Just gave my arm a quick, warm squeeze before heading up. After everything that had been done to me under the guise of care, it floored me that someone could offer comfort without strings. ###3 Therapy sessions that didn't go how I expected. Kept seeing Marla. Twice a week at first, then once. I thought she'd want to dive straight into the betrayals. Pick apart Hannah's manipulations, Aaron's chilling coldness. And we did sometimes. But mostly she asked simpler questions. What was the first thing you ever painted? Or, when's the last time you sang in the shower without wondering who was listening? First, it frustrated me. Didn't she understand how close I'd come to dying? How intricately they'd plotted? But then one afternoon, after I spent 15 minutes babbling about a bakery down the street that sold cinnamon rolls the size of my face, she smiled. "Emily, that right there. That's why I ask. Because your trauma isn't the only part of your story. If all we ever talk about is what they did, then they still own your narrative." I sat there blinking, a little stunned. 'Cause she was right. It survived. I'd walked out of that house, out of their twisted plans, carrying scars, but carrying them myself. ###4. Letting Leo lead me into better days. Leo was the one who taught me joy again. He didn't care that the living room was a mess of half-open boxes or that I sometimes started crying for no reason. All he cared about was that the door led outside. So every morning we walked. Just a few blocks at first, then around the entire neighborhood. He sniffed every lamppost like it was a sacred ritual. I followed, hands buried in my pockets, breathing in the cold. Some days we ended up at a tiny park with a duck pond. I'd sit on a damp bench, watch Leo chase squirrels he never caught, and just exist. No poison tea. No calculating smiles. Just the squeal of children on swings, dogs barking, wind rustling dry leaves. It was heartbreakingly normal. ###5 dreams that tried to drag me backward. Of course, healing isn't neat. I still woke some nights in a slick panic, convinced I'd find Hannah standing at the foot of my bed with that soft, pitying smile. Sometimes I dreamed of Aaron pressing a cold glass into my hand, whispering, "Drink up, sweetheart." I'd bolt upright, heart racing, Leo already climbing into my lap, whining low. Other nights it wasn't nightmares. It was memories. The good ones. The nights Hannah and I painted our toenails on my dorm floor, or the way Aaron used to curl around me like I was the center of his world. Those were almost worse, because they reminded me of what I thought I had, and how cruel it was to learn it was never real. ###6. Starting to want more than mere survival. A month after moving in, I signed up for a pottery class. Felt reckless, frivolous, almost obscene when so recently I'd been fighting just to wake up each day. But the first time I pressed my hands into cool clay, felt it give way under my palms, I nearly laughed out loud. It was messy, imperfect, delightfully alive. I didn't have to be good at it. Didn't have to make something pretty for anyone else. I could just enjoy the weight of the spinning wheel, the smear of mud on my forearm. That night, I caught my reflection on the way to bed. There was clay in my hair, a goofy little half-smile on my lips. And for a heartbeat, I looked like someone I used to know. Someone I missed. ###7. A fragile promise. Sometimes, sitting by my tiny kitchen table, Leo's head in my lap, I whisper things I'm still too scared to say out loud to another person. I'm not fragile. Not anymore. And I hope one day it'll be true. That the pieces Hannah and Aaron tried to shatter will fuse back together into something stronger. Maybe not seamless, but resilient in a way untouched people can't understand. ###8. A letter I never sent. I started writing a letter to Hannah. Pages of it. Not because I'd ever mail it, God no. But because I needed the words out of me. You almost did it, you know. You almost convinced me I couldn't survive without you. That I was too delicate to exist on my own. But I was wrong. You were wrong. I do exist. And I'm learning how to do it without shrinking to make you comfortable. I burned it in the sink. Watched the edges curl into black lace. Leo barked at the smoke, tail wagging like he thought we were playing some new game. ###9. The tiniest, brightest light. That evening, I sat on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. Leo snored beside me. My phone buzzed, a text from Grace. Made too much chili. Want some? It was such a small thing. But it felt enormous. Like a hand reaching through the fog. Be right up, I texted back. And as I climbed the stairs, heart nervous but hopeful, I realized this was the start of something new. A life built not on poison or pity or hidden ledgers, just on the slow, ordinary grace of being alive. By the end of winter, my little apartment began to feel less like a hideout and more like a home. The walls didn't seem to echo quite so hollow anymore. I had a battered thrift store bookshelf now, stuffed with novels and half-finished journals. A tiny pot of ivy curled over my kitchen sink. Leo had claimed the worn spot on the couch, flattening the cushion until it bore the permanent imprint of his sleepy body. Some nights I even fell asleep without clutching my phone like a lifeline. The nightmares still visited, of course. Sometimes so vividly I woke with my heart galloping, convinced Hannah was leaning over me, whispering, "It's okay, just relax. Let me take care of you." But on most mornings, sunlight filtered through my sheer curtains, catching dust motes like floating fireflies, and I'd remember. I was alive. I had chosen to live. Without them. One, the small sweetness of new connections. Grace, my upstairs neighbor, quickly became more than the knock if you need sugar acquaintance she first promised to be. We fell into an easy ritual of sharing meals once a week. Sometimes I brought over leftover stir-fry. Sometimes she passed down a loaf of bread still warm from her oven. She never pushed for details about my past. Just let me talk if I wanted, or let the silence stretch if I didn't. I once confessed that her kindness scared me a little, because the last people I trusted with my vulnerabilities used them like blueprints to break me. Grace didn't flinch. She just squeezed my hand across her little dining table and said, "Kindness that expects payment isn't kindness. That was never your failing. That was theirs." Stunned me how simple and true that felt. 2. The letter that reopened old wounds. Then, one rainy Thursday, I came home from work to find an envelope wedged into my doorframe. No stamp, no official mark. My stomach turned. Hands shaking, I tore it open right there in the hall. Inside was a single line, scrawled in a looping, almost childish script. "I still think of you every day. H." I stumbled inside, dropped my purse, sank to the floor as Leo nudged and whined at my shoulder. My heart pounded so violently I pressed my palm to my chest like I could calm it by force. Because that H, there was no doubt who had written it. And no doubt she knew exactly what she was doing by leaving it. No address, no number. Just the ghost of her presence pressing itself back into my life. 3. Old terror meets new steel. My first instinct was to run. To pack up the apartment, load Leo into the car, and vanish into another city. Because if Hannah was nearby, it meant danger. It meant manipulation. Softness dressed up as concern. Poison painted as love. But something stopped me. Something new and defiant that therapy and long walks and even Grace's gentle steadiness had helped root inside me. I didn't owe Hannah my flight. I didn't owe her my fear. I sat on the couch that night, letter on the coffee table, staring at it like it might ignite. And I repeated out loud, voice hoarse, "You don't get to own me anymore." Leo lifted his head, ears perked, and let out a single quiet woof like he was agreeing. For the police check-in that startled me. 2 days later, Detective Pruitt called. His voice was warm but clipped with professional concern. "Emily, we've been notified Hannah may have violated certain parameters by returning to the area. Did she contact you directly?" I swallowed. "She left a note. At my door. Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Keep it. We may need it if her presence escalates. Are you safe right now?" I looked around my cozy living room. Leo curled at my feet, the soft lamp light spilling over the little ivy pot. Was I safe? I was safer than I'd been in years. And I intended to stay that way. "Yes. But thank you for checking." 5. The heavy realization of just how deep it went. That night, I lay awake tracing all the moments that led here. How easy it had been to slip under Hannah's thumb. How willing I'd been to let Aaron manage the bills, the groceries, my schedule, so I could bask in the illusion of being cherished. I remembered one afternoon months before the hospital, when Hannah massaged my temples during one of my headaches. Her fingers gentle, voice like silk. "If you'd just let yourself lean on us more, Em, you wouldn't feel so scattered." I'd smiled. Let my eyes flutter closed. Grateful. Not realizing I was sinking deeper into a trap disguised as care. That was the part that made my stomach churn. How much I'd handed over. How easy it was to mistake control for devotion. How much of me had been trained to believe I needed their management to survive. 6. An unexpected invitation. And a test for my new self. Grace knocked the next evening. Movie night. I made brownies. Almost declined. My heart still hadn't settled from the note. But the look on her face, that quiet understanding that didn't pry, melted my hesitation. We curled up on her couch with Leo wedged between us, a sappy rom-com playing. Grace passed me a brownie, still warm, the chocolate scent so rich it almost made me dizzy. For a breath, fear flared. What if someone had slipped something into this too? What if love always came with hidden teeth? But then Grace's own hand dipped into the pan, pulled out a piece, and she took a big, gooey bite. Her eyes closed in exaggerated bliss. God, I'd marry this brownie if I could. I laughed. The sound startled me. It felt bright, unguarded, mine. Then I bit into mine too. Sweet, sticky, safe. And nothing happened. No dizziness, no dark wave crawling up from my gut. Just chocolate, Grace's giggle, Leo's snuffling sigh. 7. The power of deciding to stay. When I left her apartment that night, I paused outside my door. Looked at the little scratch on the frame where Hannah's note had been wedged. You don't get to chase me away, I whispered. Then I went inside, locked the door, and let Leo hop onto the bed beside me. I fell asleep with one hand on his warm flank, breathing steady, dreams mercifully blank. 8. A fragile reclaiming of joy. Days turned to weeks. Spring crawled in, tentative and cold, little green shoots poking through the dirty snow outside my window. I found myself humming while washing dishes, making tiny, silly voices for Leo, dancing alone in my kitchen when a favorite song came on. Not because the past didn't matter, not because I was magically healed, but because I was still here, still capable of joy, still writing chapters they hadn't plotted. 9. One last echo. About a month after the letter, Grace and I were walking Leo when she paused, frowning across the street. Wasn't that the woman who used to hover by your building? My breath seized. I followed her gaze. Just an empty patch of sidewalk, a car pulling away. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was Hannah. Either way, I stood a little taller. Leo pressed close to my leg, warm and solid. Doesn't matter, I said finally. She can watch. I'm not hiding. 10. Choosing life over and over. That night, I sat on my balcony again, blanket wrapped around my shoulders. Leo sprawled across my feet. I looked up at the stars, took a deep breath, and let it out slow. Still here, I whispered. And for the first time, it didn't sound like desperation. Sounded like defiance. Like a promise to myself that tomorrow and the next day and the next I'd keep choosing to live. Not just breathe, not just survive, but live. Because after everything, after all their schemes, after all their poison, that was the one victory they could never steal. By late spring, the apartment felt like mine in a way it hadn't before. The ivy had grown thick across the kitchen window, tiny tendrils grasping for more sun. The bookshelf was cluttered with dog-eared novels and dollar store photo frames. Even my bed, with its slightly sagging middle, felt like a safe little nest. I'd started teaching art classes again at the community center, just twice a week. Mostly kids, smearing bright paint across giant sheets of butcher paper, shrieking with laughter. Sometimes I'd catch myself just standing there, brush in hand, heart stuttering with a weird, unfamiliar joy. I made it, I'd think. I really made it out. 1. A shadow on the sidewalk. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because Grace had left me a loaf of banana bread that morning with a note taped to it reading, "Because you're the kind of person who deserves warm things." Leo and I were walking back from the park. The sun was high, a few wispy clouds scattered overhead. Nothing in the world should have felt threatening. Until I saw her. Hannah was standing across the street, half hidden by a rusted bus stop. Same honey brown hair, a little thinner now. Same gentle tilt to her shoulders. Hands wrapped around herself like she might blow away. For a moment my entire body locked up. Leo strained at the leash, sniffing a patch of grass. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, a drum so loud it swallowed the traffic. Then she stepped out. Just walked straight toward me. No rush. No guilt on her face. Only this haunting calm, like she'd been expecting me. 2 words that tried to pull me back under. "Emily," she breathed, stopping a few feet away. Her eyes were wet, The same way they always got when she tried to manipulate me into sympathy. I've been trying to find you. You stopped answering. You disappeared. I swallowed. My throat felt scraped raw. You can't be here. There are police reports. Orders. You're not supposed to contact me. Her lip quivered. I know. I needed to see you. To explain. Leo pressed against my leg, tense. I gripped the leash tighter. There's nothing to explain. You tried to kill me. Her face crumpled. For one horrifying second I felt almost guilty. That old reflex of comforting her, wrapping her in my arms and whispering that it was all right. But then I remembered the weeks of dizziness. The nights I lay awake tasting metal in the back of my throat. The brown vials. Her hands on my tea mug. Her final manipulation attempt. Emily, please, she whispered. I was trying to protect you. You were so fragile. Aaron was going to leave you. He told me so many times. I thought if you went peacefully it would be kinder. And I could hold on to the pieces of us. Of what we were. I felt bile crawl up my throat. What we were. You drugged me, Hannah. You watched me wither away. You wrote me a letter admitting it. Her hands flailed up, palms open like she was pleading with the universe. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I didn't want you to hurt anymore. Or to see him stop loving you. I wanted to be there. To be enough. That was the clearest she'd ever been. It made me shiver how cleanly she laid it out. As if love could ever be proven by poison. For the breaking of the last tether. For a heartbeat I could see our entire history. Sleepovers under glow-in-the-dark stars, Pinky swears in middle school bathrooms. Her tearing pages out of my journal to read and squeal over. All that weight, all that shared time. And still she had decided my life was expendable. I stepped back, Leo bristling at my thigh. I don't want to see you again, I said. My voice shook, but it was louder than hers. Not ever. If you come near me again, I will call the police before you can even say my name. Her face crumpled, tears streaking hot and fast. But I didn't move. Didn't offer a tissue. Didn't reach out to hold her shaking hands. Because some loves have to die for you to live. 5. The fragile victory of walking away. I turned and walked back toward my building. Each step felt like pushing through molasses. I half expected her to run after me, clutch my arm, beg me to remember all the times we saved each other from smaller heartbreaks. But she didn't. When I risked a glance over my shoulder, she was gone. Like a ghost dissipating into daylight. Inside, I locked every deadbolt, then slumped against the door. Leo nosed at my hand, whining low. I sank down to the floor with him, my whole body shaking. It's okay, I whispered into his fur. She's gone. Really gone. And for the first time I almost believed it. 6. The shock of being proud. That night, I sat on the balcony with a mug of tea. Tea I'd made myself, in a kettle only I ever touched. Leo lay across my feet, sighing contentedly every few minutes. I found myself smiling. Actually smiling. Not because anything magical had happened. Not because the universe had restored all that was stolen. But because I had faced her. Looked into the eyes of my would-be executioner and chosen myself anyway. I whispered it out loud, just to hear it in the night air. I'm proud of you. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I didn't mean it for anyone else. Only me. 7. Letting the future start to bloom. Days passed. No mysterious letters. No sightings. Grace, ever perceptive, brought over a pie just because, and we didn't talk about anything heavier than the best brands of dog treats. At the art center, a little girl tugged on my apron during class. Miss Emily, do you have a dog? When I said yes, her eyes went round. He must be very happy. You smile a lot. I almost laughed. Me. Smiling. But then I realized I did. All the time lately. When Leo tripped over his own paws. When the barista spelled my name right. When I woke up and sunlight was streaming through the ivy, catching on dust like glitter. 8. A final, gentle reclaiming. Sometimes I still catch my breath when I pass the mirror. I don't look fragile anymore. There's more color in my face, more certainty in how I stand. Like my body finally knows it's mine again. One evening, I sat cross-legged on my living room rug, painting a little canvas for Grace. Leo snoozed with his head on my thigh. And it hit me all at once. This was all they'd tried to rob me of. This quiet, this safety, this easy open breath. And they'd failed. 9. Saying goodbye to the old ghosts. Before bed, I pulled out the last box from my move, the one I'd shoved under the bed because I wasn't ready. It was filled with old photos. Me and Hannah, arms slung around each other, faces bright with sweat at concerts. Aaron kissing my temple at a farmer's market. Laughing shots on picnic blankets at pumpkin patches, clinking glasses. I sifted through them, my chest aching. Then, with a breath that felt like tearing off a bandage, I started feeding them one by one into the small fireplace. Watching them curl and blacken, their happy illusions turning to ash. When the last one disappeared, I stood there a long time, tears leaking down my cheeks. But they weren't for them. They were for me. For the girl who hadn't known what love was supposed to be. Who confused caretaking with cages. And now the future feels unwritten in the best possible way. I don't know what's coming. I don't know who I'll become. But I know I'll keep choosing mornings with Leo, paint under my nails, warm bread shared with someone who doesn't want to control me. And that, for now, is enough. It's strange to stand at the end of a story you were never sure you'd survive long enough to finish. Stranger still to realize it might not be an ending at all, just the soft beginning of something I never let myself hope for. One finding holy places in ordinary moments. Some mornings I wake before my alarm. Leo's already sprawled across half the bed, snoring like an old engine. The sky out the window is still a murky cobalt, the city only starting to stir. I pad into the kitchen on bare feet, fill the kettle, listen for its low rumble. And it hits me, right there, mundane and profound, that this is peace. No footsteps in my hallway that aren't mine. No hushed conspiracies in my kitchen. Just the gentle clutter of my own small life. I pour the water over a tea bag. Real tea chosen by me, handled only by me. The steam wraps around my face and I close my eyes, breathing it in like incense. This is what survival actually looks like, I think. Not grand speeches or dramatic swells of violins. Just small rituals that whisper, "You're safe now. You get to be here." Two dreams I can finally trust again. For so long my dreams were battlegrounds. Aaron chasing me through dark corridors. Hannah cradling my head in her lap while shadows spilled from her mouth like ink. I'd wake twisted in sweat-soaked sheets. Leo whining, licking my face until I surfaced. But lately my dreams have softened. They're filled with color again. Sunsets drenching open fields, paintings that seem to breathe under my hands, laughter that isn't cut off by dread. Sometimes I dream of that house on Mulberry Lane, but it's empty, overgrown with ivy curling through broken windows. And I walk right past it without even slowing down. 3. The gentle miracle of new days. Grace likes to say healing isn't linear, it's a garden. Some days full of bright shoots, other days the ground goes cold again, stubborn and unyielding. But if you keep tending it, keep watering, keep pulling back dead leaves, eventually something beautiful grows. She told me that last week while we repotted my ivy together, her hands dirt-caked, her laugh ringing bright through my tiny kitchen. I wanted to cry, not out of sorrow, but out of the sheer grace of being witnessed in my rebirth. After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time just watching the new soil settle. A tiny ritual, a tiny sacred thing. Proof that nurturing is only holy when it comes without a leash. 4 little promises to myself. I've started writing promises on sticky notes and tacking them all over my apartment. Little vows just between me and the universe. I will trust my instincts, even when they scare me. I will eat cake without wondering who's counting. I will love fiercely but never let love put me in a cage again. I will let Leo drag me to the park even when it rains. I will not shrink so someone else can grow. They're silly. They curl at the edges, collect dust. But they're mine. And every time I catch a glimpse of neon pink stuck to the fridge or bright yellow on the bathroom mirror, I remember how far I've crawled out of the pit they dug for me. 5. The sacred art of not hating. You'd think after everything, the betrayal, the carefully poured poisons, the way Aaron and Hannah almost convinced me I was too delicate to live without their orchestration, I'd be full of rage. Sometimes I am. Sometimes it hits so hard I have to grip the edge of the sink and breathe through it. But mostly, weirdly, I feel sad for them. For whatever deep rot inside them decided love meant ownership, that devotion was proven by destroying the very thing they claimed to treasure. And I let that sadness float out the window. Because their darkness doesn't get to drip into the bright rooms I've started building inside myself. 6. The way Leo sees me now. There's this moment every night. I turn off the last lamp, climb into bed, and Leo hops up beside me. He does this slow, silly army crawl across the comforter until his head rests on my chest. He sighs, long and rattling, then closes his eyes. Trusts me. Trusts the world around us. And I realize I must be doing something right. Because animals know. They always know. 7. Making art again without bleeding for it. At the art center, I've started staying late after the kids go home. Cleaning brushes, wiping little neon handprints off tables, letting the hush settle around me. Then I pull out my own canvas. Nothing fancy. Thick strokes of blue and purple, gold lines that twist like rivers. Sometimes I paint a tiny spark of red in the corner. Sometimes just let the colors melt into each other with no plan. No one's watching. No one's grading. It's art for breathing, not proving. And for the first time since college, I don't flinch when someone peeks over my shoulder. 8. A new vow, written in bolder ink. Yesterday I wrote a new sticky note. Pressed it dead center on my bathroom mirror so it would be the first thing I saw when I woke. I am not fragile. I am deliberate. Made me laugh at first. Because 2 years ago, even whispering that would have felt like blasphemy. Like tempting fate to prove me wrong. But this morning when I saw it again, I traced the letters with my fingertip. And I believed it. In my bones. In the new sturdiness of my heartbeat. 9. The dream that tastes like freedom. Last night I dreamed of a house by a lake. Not Mulberry Lane. Somewhere wilder, bristling with pines, the water churning with silver fish. I was on a porch, paint-streaked and barefoot, watching Leo chase dragonflies. There was no phantom laughter from inside. No hidden vials in the kitchen drawers. Just me. Whole. Peace. I woke up with tears drying on my cheeks. Happy tears, I realized, because maybe that dream wasn't so unreachable anymore. 10. The life after the end. So this is me. The woman who survived best friends with poisoned tea and husbands who wanted easy exits. The woman who keeps a leash by the door, an ivy on the sill, and a cluttered bookshelf full of stories that don't end in funerals. I still whisper it sometimes before bed, a little prayer stitched together by all the broken pieces. Still here. Still here. But now it's not a plea. It's a promise. And maybe, finally, it's also a celebration.